When it comes to making lifestyle changes that are going to support our health and healing, sometimes we can be sabotaged by our very own thoughts. That's what we're talking about today on Wellness by Design. I'm your host, Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer, and my guest is Jen Powter. Jen is a expert in helping people get to the root issues behind why they can't make the lifestyle changes to support what they have as goals for their health and their life. I'm so excited for you to meet her. And we're also going to be talking about how to overcome those self sabotaging thoughts. I'll see you inside. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Jen Powter, welcome to Wellness by Design today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here, Jane.
I'm so happy to have you here. We met in person a couple of months ago, and I was just love your energy, and I love your story, your background, and what you do, and how much you inspire people. So let's hear a little bit about your background and what brought you into the health space, because we all have our own journey, right?
Don't
Let's
we
hear
ever?
yours, Jen.
Yeah, we do. I think it is true. For me, I've been in this space as a practitioner and clinician for more than 15 years now. And previous to that was still in the world of health. But for me, there was something incredibly humbling about having a master's degree in exercise physiology, like high level education, had been a personal trainer, Ironman athlete, multi-marathoner. And yet I found myself carrying 40 extra pounds. And on my 5'6" frame, it was a lot. I knew what to do. And yet, for whatever reason, I would stay frustrated and stuck, and I wasn't doing what I needed to do. I thought that I was sometimes, but there was a lot of stuff running in the background that I wasn't aware of. And so, kind of in my breakdown moment, I was, trying to exercise off my extra weight because back then that was the method to, in style. And I had two little kids. I mean, I was leaking. I just broke down on the side of a trail and I cried. And I was this like, I was just this sad woman. My tears were freezing to my face because literally it would have been in December in Calgary, which is cold. And I just thought there has to be a better way. And I literally heard a voice that said back to me, there is, but you're on the wrong path.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so that began a different kind of journey.
I love that you heard a voice. I heard a voice too that changed everything for me too. So I think in those moments when we're, at our lowest, and maybe it's a point of surrender where we really kind of let go. That's when I think that higher, wiser soul, whatever you want to call it, speaks to you and says something's got to give. And so you are a weight loss coach now, and but I think this audience, my audience, is mostly people who have pain and other chronic health conditions. Sometimes that goes along with extra weight as well, and lots of times people with pain are told, especially if they got knee pain or something, well, if you just lost some weight, it would be take the strain off. And so there's that as well. But I think whether we're talking about weight loss or whether we're talking about other lifestyle habits that are going to support your body, this mindset piece is it. It is
Yes.
it, right? So you work with mindset. What was it for you? Because you said you were 40 pounds overweight. You're not 40 pounds overweight now. You have helped thousands and thousands of people lose weight.
Yeah.
What was the key?
So that was my big $60 million question, really, is like, what is going on? And I think what happens, and I work with women over 40, most of my clients are in their 50s and 60s. And for many of us, we acquire like a lot of knowledge. We want to know how to do it. We want to know what to do. And so we hoard all this knowledge. And for most of us, it's not a knowledge problem. It's an application and implementation and consistency problem. So I was like, okay, I get that, but what's at the root of that? Like,
Mhm.
why is that the problem? And honestly, Jane, that's what took me to doing a ton of research on sabotage, which was what my whole second book was about. It's like, what's the space? And it's knowing, doing, and this space in between is why we don't do it. And so that began a fascinating journey into understanding really the psychology of behavior change, the subconscious blocks that will prevent us from taking action to take care of ourselves, which then creates the symptom of what we're dealing with.
Right. Yeah. I can see how that translates across, what I do as well. So, are there any common patterns of like saboteurs that people have? Or,
No, for sure. Yeah.
yeah, okay,
And like a sabotage is sort of like the end product, but there's a lot of things that will create that. And so I always say that there's the cousins of sabotage. Um, um, there's the self-betrayal. So you say one thing, but you do another. You're constantly lying to yourself. You say you're going to get up at 6, you hit snooze until 7:30. You say you're not going to drink the wine, you drink the wine. So like we can get very used to engaging in our white lies. That means if somebody else was lying to you like that, you wouldn't trust them. So we
right.
often have no trust in our own selves. The other thing is self-neglect. I think for a lot of women, and I do specialize with women, I think it's a little bit different for men. They have different issues. But for the women here, we are very much socially conditioned to take care of others, to be a good wife, to be a good mom, to be a good employee or CEO or good leader. And somewhere along the line, we just very slowly slip off that priority list. And so instead of self-care, we don't even have that. We actually just have self-neglect. Then
Hmm.
I also found it could go deeper into the kind of environment we were raised in, what we were exposed to as children. And it doesn't have to be big T trauma. And a lot of people are like, well, I wasn't abused, Jen, and I didn't have assault or anything happen to me. And it doesn't have to be that, although for many women, it is. But it
Hmm.
can be just your emotional needs and wants were never met as a child. And so we acclimate to that. We acclimate to what's familiar, even if it's painful. And so a lot of times taking these actions of self-care go against what's normal. And so they feel equal, like even more uncomfortable to do it. Not to mention the daily stressors of being busy, still needing to care for others, maintain the full-time job. Like we're such doers, there's an unlearning to that and a relearning of really what nourishing and nurturing yourself looks like in
Mm,
my world, for sure, Jane.
so true. So true. And I see it a lot. Often the people that are experiencing a lot of these conditions, and like you said, a lot of women, um, they've gone into a lot of the caring professions too. Have you noticed that? Like
Totally.
they're teachers or they're nurses or they're, some other kind of, now that wasn't my case. I was an engineer, but I turned out to be a teacher as well. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we end up going into these professions where we're all still giving and giving and giving and never giving to ourselves. And there comes a time when the body says
The
no.
body breaks. You can only abuse it for so long. And like there's great book when the body says no, the body keeps a score. Like there are so many incredible books out there. And I find too, probably very much like in your community, I work with very successful, very, very driven, very accomplished women. It is not a lack of intellect or smarts or laziness or any of this other stuff. In fact, many of them have been trying for years and decades to change their situation, their symptoms. But there's something that's in the way. And so, of course, my title is weight loss expert, but it's weight loss and mindset. And I think it's really powerful because I had somebody at a conference come up to me and they asked me, what is mindset? Right? It's a word that's thrown around a lot sometimes without actually realizing what it is we're talking about. And in my community, we break this down. It's the thoughts that you think. And more importantly, it's the voice you're listening to that often is saying really unkind things to you. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we think we're that voice. We identify so strongly with it. That's just who I am. That's how I drive myself. But that's one of those sabotaging voices. And it comes in really early in life. And the problem with it is in many ways, and certainly in my case, that voice, which taught me or I chose to believe early in my life because there was no one to correct the narrative. Well, I wasn't enough. My dad left. If I was enough, he would have stayed. My mom smoked and drank. If I was enough, which I begged her to stop, then she would have. She didn't. I made it all about me because
Same.
I was little. I
Yeah.
didn't know any better. And
Oh,
there was no one to say, Jen, they've got their stuff. Honey, this is nothing to do with you. So for decades, I ran this pattern of not being enough and trying to find my value outside of who I was and in what I did, which is exhausting because you can never do enough to be enough.
yep.
So
Same. And I see that over and over again as well. We've just developed these beliefs, and like you said, no one corrected them, and because we've thought them over and over again, we think they're true, and we don't
yeah,
even realize that we're thinking them, right? There's just so
totally.
varied so varied in that subconscious mind. So
Yeah.
people that are listening and watching now, maybe they're even identifying with this and saying, yep, that's me. I know I do this and I don't know what to do about it. What do you have as a suggestion for them? Like, how do you get past these saboteurs, the voice in your head that's giving you the wrong information and the wrong guidance? How do we move past it?
Oh, it's such a great question. And unfortunately, it's not easy.
Mm,
But I say you have to be a little bit. So, what I actually find is the biggest block in this is fear. We
yeah.
are so afraid to, and so I don't mean that somebody's walking around, ooh, I'm scared. Like, I don't mean like that. I mean fear of procrastination. I call it we run our rackets. We run our justifiable, rational excuses of why we don't do it. And they're very believable. I mean, you're busy, you're this, that, and the other. Your parents need you, your kids need you. Like, who can argue with that? Except you use it as the reason why you don't put time into you. And a lot of women are secretly afraid. And they're afraid of what their Pandora's box that they're going to open up, of it's going to be too much work. But at some point, you've got to be like, okay, at 50, at 60, oh my God, we're still young. There's a whole boatload of life left to live here. The past can't change it, but you
Mhm.
can rewrite or like write a new future, but it begins today. And you have to tap into something so deep within yourself where you can believe in yourself at least a bit more than you don't. And I find a lot of times that women will need support, community, uh, to do that because left on our own, I don't know about anybody else, but if you can relate, let me know that lone wolf syndrome. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to be a Debbie Downer. If things are going hard, you kind of withdraw, retract, isolate because you don't want to be a complainer. You don't want, and actually, it's exactly the opposite because there's so much shame and pain in enduring that stuff by yourself that you can lighten the load immensely when you start to get vulnerable and share. And really, what we know from the research on sabotage is the antidote is not criticism and beating yourself up for what you don't do. It is compassion and empathy for yourself. And
Mm,
it's to give yourself like self compassion. And it doesn't mean complacency, but it means, hey, I did the best I could where I was at the time, and I'm here and I can do it a little bit differently.
hmm.
So to
And
embrace that.
yeah, so beautiful. I love that, Jen. And the whole idea of people thinking, well, I got to make some big changes. Like, I don't know what you see in what you do. Is it big changes or is it the little baby steps?
I think it depends for each client. I mean, the level of self neglect and self abandonment, I do personally believe it's the baby steps taken consistently that create the big changes. That if
Mhm.
we go too hard too quickly, we actually know from the brain research that you can maybe do it for like a week, which is why people feel that they need so much discipline or commitment or willpower and they lack it. But it's like they're literally trying to do way too much all at once. And that does create the feeling of overwhelm, which is the precursor to quitting. And so I'm a bigger fan of let's make this easy and also let's make this change process, this healing process fun.
Mhm.
Um, as women, for sure, if it's not fun or if we don't like doing it, we kind of don't do it. Like we'll go find our fun somewhere else, right? And for my clients, that can often be in chocolate or a glass of wine or the very thing that's creating some of the challenges for them with their health, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think the brain can more readily adapt to smaller changes consistently And the consistency piece is what goes for more, like most people, because that's what they sabotage. It's how they stay in that hamster wheel.
Yeah. And the other thing that can happen when people try to make really big sweeping changes and like go at it gung ho, if they get stressed or feel overwhelmed, then they're going to be creating chemicals of stress in their body, which can add to weight gain, can add to pain, can add to, immune problems and so on. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the baby steps as well. And what you do consistently day to day matters way more than what you do once in a while.
Oh,
So,
totally.
yeah, yeah. So, even
It's a
if you,
practice. Like,
it's a total,
it's a
it's a,
practice.
it's a practice, and it's not like a temporary shift. Like you can muscle through something temporarily, but you're really talking about making the kind of fundamentally changing how you think about yourself. That's what I'm getting
Oh,
out of
yeah,
what you're saying
absolutely.
there.
We
Yeah.
we have a whole module on identity shifting.
Yeah.
That like the identity, I mean, for my clients, they'll have an identity of a woman who struggles with their weight or who's overweight or who wears big clothes or who doesn't do these things or who's a chocoholic or like we have whole identities built around our belief systems. And for many of us, we want to make ourselves right about ourselves. So we'll engage in the behavior to go, see, look, that's who I am because that's what I do. And so at some point, it's like a snake shedding a skin. You've got to recognize, and I think that this is something that we need to be doing on the regular where it's like, hey, are there aspects of myself that just don't work for me anymore? Maybe they worked in my 20s or my 30s, but now it's like I'm wearing something that's outdated and isn't serving me. And can I leave it behind? And that identity shift is embracing something new for sure, but it's also letting something go. And to start to acclimate to this belief system that supports your new identity, which is reinforced through the actions you take. So it's a very cyclical, repetitive process. And we know from brain research that there's got to be some neural rewiring and some neural pruning, but that takes time.
Yeah.
I mean, how many decades have I thought a crappy thought about myself? It doesn't just go away. That pathway is like a well-worn groove in my brain. If I'm now going to think a new thought and only think it like once a year, there is no pathway being created. I've got to have repetition and the practice of thinking it, even if I'm skeptical of it,
Yeah.
which even might be I can heal, I can get better. This is just a moment in time. I am capable of overcoming this, of thriving,
Hmm.
right? These are all things that might society, family, that saboteur voice in your head might be telling you something different. So you got to learn how to strengthen your own voice and become stronger than that.
Mm, I love it. And also, you talked earlier about, you know, behaviors where you're breaking trust in yourself. So as you take these little steps and make these little commitments and follow through, then you're building trust in yourself again, which is so important, right? That we can
Oh
trust
God,
ourselves.
yeah.
Trust
I
ourselves to
mean,
do what we say we're going to do.
totally. And what I find with my clients, my community, is like they'll do it when it's easy, but when it gets inconvenient, they stop. And the problem is your health doesn't care about your feelings in that way. You need to do it whether it feels convenient or not, whether you feel like doing it or not. And I always just say, for anybody who's had a child in their life, grandchild, when you're waking up multiple times a night to change a diaper, you probably don't feel like doing it. Like you're like, oh man, but you get up and get out of bed and you go do it. Why? Because you love that baby and you want to take good care of it. And
Hmm.
we got to learn how to love ourselves like that when it's convenient and when it's not. And
That's gorgeous because most people can really relate to, well, yeah, that's something I don't want to do, but I do it because I love. So if people can transfer that same feeling of love that they would give this little tiny human being to themselves, and of course, that's where it starts, then that can make all the difference in their lives.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Tell us about your book, Jen. I know that you've got a gift for us. So,
Yeah, so it is. And the title, don't let it mislead you. It's Stop Sabotaging Your Weight Loss, Why You Do It, and How to Fix It. But honestly, you can stop sabotaging your fill in the blank. And so many, I mean, all of the chapters in that will address some of the most common root things that we as humans subconsciously engage in.
Mm-hmm.
And, I spent a good, few years like really diving into this topic through emotional intelligence and to really just understanding what is it we're up against? Because, like I said, it's not knowledge. So, if it's not knowledge, how do we learn about what we might be doing? And so, there's tons of stories in it. They all come from real life women who learned and had to overcome and share things. And I really hope that, perfectionism, for instance, is one of the chapters. Perfectionism. I mean, most people say it like it's badge of honor. And I'm like, oh no.
Mm.
Right? Because you can chase perfect forever. You'll never get there. Nothing can be
Yeah.
perfect.
I see it over and over again that people with chronic pain often have the people pleasing, perfectionism, the
Yeah.
hyper independence, hyper vigilance, those types of, which Gabor Mate, you mentioned his book earlier, When the Body Says No, he calls them behavioral adaptations. We think it's our personality, but it's not. It's a behavioral adaptation we created when we were really young because we couldn't fight and we couldn't flee. So we created this other, fawn is the word that's being used a lot now. Like we created these fawning behaviors as a self-protection thing, and we've just hung on to them for way longer than we needed to. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so happy you have a chapter on perfectionism dealing with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think I just have so much compassion for us as humans. Being human can be hard sometimes. What we works, and again, like Jane, like none of what we necessarily had to endure as children was fair. But at some point, as a grown up, as a grown woman, that healing responsibility, it is mine. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no one else can do this work for me. And I used to wish that I could just have a fairy health godmother descend into my life. And I realized no one was coming. Like it was going to be up to me if
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to change this. And I cried, frankly. I was like, I had a little moment and then I gathered my strength and I was like, okay, I'm up for this. And I
Yeah.
just think that we all need reminders that you're so much more capable than you give yourself credit for. You have so much more access to strength than you can remember when you're feeling weak in a moment. And what's on the other side of the struggle is just so worth getting to.
Ah, so good. So good. And the same with pain as well, that we're taught that someone else can fix it, maybe in weight loss. So I suppose there are some, let's take a pill, or let's take a supplement, or let's have a
Oh yeah,
surgery.
take a gummy, take a this, take a that, take an injection,
Yeah.
take fen. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of medicalizing that situation.
Yeah. And for pain as well, there's all these other things. And, not saying any of those things are wrong, but we're not we're not like experiencing these problems because we are missing that thing. It's like something deeper. And that something deeper, the only person that can do that and fix that is ourselves, right? So
Yeah. Do
it's
we have time for one quick story? It's just like
oh,
hitting home.
absolutely. Let's hear it.
Okay. So my mom has lived with neuropathy since, oh, well, for the last 25 years, like debilitating neuropathy.
Oh,
And she was in a car accident in 1986, she was hit by a drunk driver. But my mom also was a woman who self-medicated and numbed. And I'm not saying that I'm not whitewashing pain, but I do believe that if my mom had found the courage and the support to go and do some emotional healing and processing of so many micro and macro traumas in her life, I believe that maybe with some pharmacological intervention and support from physicians and allopathic medicine and with her own inner work, she could have had really completely different outcomes in her life. And so what you do is incredibly near and dear to my heart. Um, I watched my mom, who I adore, live in so much pain.
oh,
And part of it was her weight. She didn't change that. Part of it was her behaviors, her lifestyle. She wouldn't change that. But a lot of it was this deep, let's just put it under the carpet and pretend it's not there. Don't see it. Didn't happen, but it was there. And her body knew. So thank you for doing what you do.
yeah. Oh, thank you, Jen. I'm so sorry to hear that about your mom. And you
Yeah.
know, I don't know why some of us have these problems and some people have bigger problems than others, but I believe that we came here to experience stuff, and it's up to us how we deal with it. And
Yeah.
you know maybe if we don't get it right this time around, maybe we get another chance to get it right.
Totally.
So
But we're always getting the opportunity for new lessons. Do we accept it or
yeah,
reject it? If we reject
yeah,
it, it's going to circle back around.
yeah,
It really
it's
does.
true. And even within your lifetime, right, the one thing happens, and then you have this, and then you get this opportunity to react or respond, take responsibility in a different way. And then if you don't, it comes comes around again, and there's another lesson. And so we see it over and over again. So we're given lots of opportunities to
Yeah.
figure
Oh,
this
yeah.
out, right? So
Well, and I
whenever.
can tell you, I've been a slow learner sometimes and a quick learner others. It depends on my triggers and my trauma. Like,
Exactly.
so
I see them in a different way now. Every time I have something that a triggering thing, I'm like, okay. I mean, not immediately. Sometimes I still fall back in the old thing, but I catch myself sooner. Like,
yeah.
okay, here we go. This is another opportunity for me to respond differently, and really kind of be that observer, and like what's going on here, instead of in the thick of the hurt and whatever else is going on. But we do get these opportunities. And there's a great quote I love by the mind architect. Are you familiar with him?
No, I
uh,
don't know. I don't think so.
Gosh, I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, his quote is something like this: life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free.
Uh, oh,
And I
yeah.
think it's Peter Crohn's his name. And I think that's just so beautiful, because that's what it is. Like we all just really want love and freedom, right? And
Totally.
so these things that come along are either physically taking our freedom or emotionally taking our freedom. But we have the opportunity always to tell a different story and give our future self a different opportunity to live differently, right? So
100%. Like 100%. And I think just frankly, I'm all one more, like that's the beauty of age. It's our wisdom. Yeah, I can tell you, I don't know if anybody's read The Power of Now, but
yeah,
I remember reading that book back back when I was in my 20s. I had to read it 4 times before it made sense to me. I was like, I thought it was the stupidest book ever when I was like 27. That's when it came out, I think. I was like, this is dumb. I don't really get this. And then I read it again a few years later, then again, and then finally I was like, ah, yes, I'm one with this book. Like I got the principles. But that's because I had to have my this life experience, and I had to learn through some hard knocks and some challenges to grow myself.
yes,
And so for anybody who's like, oh, really, I just think we're so lucky to be here at whatever age and stage and whatever challenges we've got in our life. We're
yeah.
so lucky to be here. Let's make the most of it.
Yes, and you will hear things differently and take different things, different stages in your life. I've got some people that have been on my membership for years, and sometimes, I'll have some same lessons, some new lessons. They'll be like, "Did you did you do that before?" And like, "Yeah, it's the same one. I didn't get that before, but I see it so differently now." So we as we change, we get a different message from the
Yeah.
teachers, the books, the whatever it is that we're learning from. And I love that too. And I've noticed that my husband and I are just redoing one of those Deepak Chopra and Oprah 21-day guided meditations.
Yes.
Haven't done it in about 5 years. And so we're like, oh, this is easy, let's just do this. So we sit there and we're
Aw.
thinking, wow, I don't remember hearing that before.
Oh, yeah. I
But
love
I'm in a
that.
different
I'm
place
the
now.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so great. I love it. It's so fun being human.
It really is. And we take life so seriously sometimes, like we make our stuff so big. And I think you mentioned like just going to that 30,000-foot view of our life and observing it. And
Mm,
then, I always just say, like, if we're ruminating or regretting our past, or if we're constantly worried about our future, that's your indication that you're not here right
yeah,
now. And that,
not in the now.
you're not. And it's so easy to get pulled that way, right? But
Yeah,
that's the first step in so many in so many ways is to
it
learn
is.
how to get that skill set.
It is. So Jen, this show is about helping people like intentionally create a life that's going to support their body to heal. So we talked about the baby steps. What would you say would be a baby step someone could take today that's going to begin to create that healing environment in their body?
Okay, I love this. So in my experience, and I've taught live workshops, and I'll say, hey, like how many of you know the top 3 things that if you did them right now, it would make a difference in your life? So I'm asking that question, whatever is coming to your listener's mind, like whatever's coming to you as you listen to this, listen, go and take action on one. And that's it. Do one thing that your gut just told you, because here's the thing, when we ignore our gut, like that gut intuitive hit, we're ignoring our own internal GPS system, which means we're not going in the right direction. So I want to help people tune in to what they know, but kind of pretend they don't know and follow their intuitive messaging. Like if you do that, that is the easiest baby step you can take. And then you start to strengthen that trust with what your gut's telling you, which strengthens your ability to turn down that negative voice. So it's all connected. But literally, if I had to say the question again, it's what are the top 3 things you know that if you did them, it would make a difference in your health, quality of life, happiness? Feel the answer, go do it.
You just gave people such a beautiful gift because you've let them trust themselves. You've let them determine what is doable for them. Perfect coach. and now let them go do it, right? So gorgeous, Jen. Love that. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Jen Powter, easy to find on there. And of course, my website, jenniferpowter.com. There's free books on there you can get. You can see the podcast I've got called Weight Loss Simplified, but we do talk about this deeper stuff. And those are the best places to go if you're just looking for some quick, easy wins.
Thank you. And that's Powter with a T. And we will have the links in the show notes. So make sure that you go there to get the right links and
That's
all
right.
spelled correctly. And
That's
also
right.
Jen's gift will be there as well. So Jen, thank you so much for being a guest on Wellness by Design today. I'm so glad you were here.
Thank you for having me. And thanks to your listeners for tuning in. I love the work you're up to, Jane. I really am grateful I'm here.
Oh, thank you. It's a big love fest because I love what you're doing too. And people watching, listening, listen to that baby step that Jen gave you and take action on it. Trust yourself. Trust yourself on this. You know you can do this. And I'll see you again soon on Wellness by Design.